Hi, Quinbus here again, member of the FreePlane user community. This video is just a quick follow-up, and I do mean quick, to the video that was just produced a day ago, demonstrating note-taking capabilities within FreePlane. As always happens with video, you look at it later and realize there's some material that should have been covered, and of course you could stick it on at the end, but it always ends up looking like it's stuck on at the end. So what I'm going to do is just produce a real quick video to provide the information that I intended to provide and just forgot to do it as I made the previous one. To recap, I was sharing 4 small scripts that I use as a part of the FreePlane environment to take notes. These scripts automate the process of creating attributes and populating them, adding icons and conditioning the node in terms of its visual impact in ways that you couldn't do if you were doing it by yourself. I mean, there are lots of settings that would have to be taken. Each node would have to be conditioned individually. The script simply automates that. One in particular I have assigned to my F1 key, and when you push it, you get a dialog that looks like this. You remember from the other video. This is a way to assign a particular value, an attribute value, to a given node in one of each of these categories. These are my categories, and there's nothing special about them, but I thought afterwards I should at least show you what they are and how I use them. If you want more detail about this little script and how it works, be sure and see the earlier video under this same title, part 1. But what I've done here is taken a copy. I've actually created for each of those categories a node that demonstrates what it is and how I use it. You've already seen the to-do action item and the resource action item. If you recall from the other video, basically these color schemes, these unique appearances for each of those categories in the little dialog pull down are basically managed by an attribute called type associated with each node, and the type is given a name, in this case a to-do, in this case a resource. Here's an example of what I use: a quote, type quote, which I use if I'm in the meeting and someone makes a quote that I do want to remember. Say it's demonstrated in they've written it down, or they actually say something that I want to remember verbatim. I'll put it in a node and then assign it a type value using the little pull down menu of quote, and you get a distinct look that is easy to find later. A private note, if I say type private, a private note is really something that I've put in my notes that was an observation that really was not a part of my notes. It may have been an observation about an individual. It may have been an observation about the way the meeting was running, but it's not the kind of thing I would want to share with others if I publish my notes or share with them. So I need to label those things so that I can find them later. In fact, I have a little script, not surprisingly, that I can go out and find private notes and momentarily eliminate them so that when I make a copy, they're not there anymore. That way individuals won't see my private notes, and I use this usually a note to myself, and it's not something I would want to share if I did. An electronic type is simply a way to designate in a node materials that were shared electronically. When it happens in a meeting, someone is making a PowerPoint presentation, and they will say, of course I'll make my PowerPoint deck available after the meeting. Well, I just simply use this technique to identify that there is an electronic file available or to be made available. At some point when it is available, I put it on my hard drive. I can actually then put a link from this node over to the actual deck, the PowerPoint deck or Word or Google Doc or whatever it is, and it's a trigger for me to be sure and do that. So typically, if you saw this in my notes, you would see not only this electronic document type, but there would be a red URL indicator suggesting that I had made a link then to wherever that document was located. This is just a way to help me remember that I've got electronic media available. There were materials shared with me that are not a part of this presentation. A type of prayer. I work in a Christian not-for-profit agency is one of my clients, and oftentimes during the course of a meeting there are prayer requests made. Individuals or people that are not in the room but who have requested prayer or who need prayer. This is a way that I can notate that and identify who the individual was by use of the assigned field. So this assigned field now has a value that's going to be different than it would be if it were a to-do. This means this is the individual that has requested prayer. I usually note what the issue is, what they've asked for, and then flag it as a prayer type node, and it has a unique look. If you recall from the other presentation, it's very easy for me to go through and gather up using this little summary report script to go out and find all of the individual cases of type equals prayer and publish a list. So at the end of the meeting, any prayer requests can be identified and shared with the group. And then finally, an agenda item, type agenda. This, I don't use that much. At one time I thought it might be useful, but an agenda item is something that gets added during the course of the meeting. It wasn't something that we had talked about being in the meeting. And as I say here, honestly, I don't really use this one much. The original idea was to flag an area of a discussion that was new, that wasn't part of the original plan of the meeting. Sometimes I will also use it if an individual makes a request for an agenda item at a future meeting. But again, I don't use it that much. Okay, that gives you an example of how I use that little pull-down menu, which to refresh looks like this. This is just simply a quick way to assign those values which appear over here, rather than creating the attribute and then typing in a word that maybe it's electronic, maybe it's another time I called it hard drive, maybe I called it electronics, and end up with inconsistency that would make it very hard to go find. This, pulling this down, always conditions the attributes I'm using the same for every node, and that's why I use it this way. The little boxes to allow me to assign it to one of the members on my team, or if I wish, I can type in a text field separated by spaces for anyone else who happens not to be in this list. If a due date's appropriate, then I use it for that. But that's how I use it. I use for to-dos and resources, quotes, private, and electronic. I use, well, in prayer, I use all the time. Agenda is not one I use very often. So really, just in the interest of completeness, that's why I put this together. If obviously you could create other types, you could let your imagination be your guide here and structure nodes, types of nodes that would meet any particular need you have. It's not that hard to recondition the script to add or subtract these types. So just wanted you guys to be aware of how it gets used so that it might trigger thoughts in some of you who are wanting to do something like this. If you have any questions, I'm out on the user group. Go by the name of Quinbus. Feel free to give me a ring. We can talk.